just go. Punk me thinking for yourself. You ain't hardcore cause you spike your hair, but the job still lives inside your head. Nazi punks, Nazi punks, Nazi punks. Fuck off. Nazi punks, Nazi punks, Nazi punks. Fuck off. Become the fight, get up.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Zoobox Goes to the Movies. I'm again joined by Jeremy, or Jeremobie as he's known on the internet. What's going on, Jeremy? Thanks for being on.
Thank you for having me back on, Shaun. I'm having a great time. I'm on vacation. I'm not in my normal studio setup. I'm in my grandparents' office.
But you got a nice bear behind you, though. I can appreciate that. You got a bear.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, there's a history of that, I'm sure. It's beautiful.
Well, you know, just before we even get started, I just want to say, if people want to check it out, I'm going to put it in the description. Jeremy has recently released a short film. It's not your first one, but It's your newest one. Called Tape Deck. It's going to be in the description, so I encourage everyone to go and check that out. I'm saying it now because before Jeremy opens his mouth and you think he's an idiot. That's a little joke, everyone. All right, everybody. Yeah, today we're going to be talking about Jeremy Saulnier's third film, Green Room, from 2015.
All right. I can get you guys a solid gig. Matinee tomorrow, doors at 1, you guys are on at 3.
The film is written and directed by Jeremy Saulnier. It stars Anthony Yelkin, Imogen Poots, Patrick Stewart, Aaliyah Shawkat, Joe Cole, Caleb Turner, Mark Webber, David W. Thompson, Macon Blair, Eric Edelstein, and others. The logline plot synopsis is a punk rock band is forced to fight for survival after witnessing a murder at a neo-Nazi skinhead bar.
You're just staying.
Shoot who's left. Let him bleed.
Get ready to run.
Here we go.
Careful now.
This'll be over soon, gentlemen.
And so here we go. So I had actually brought this one up to Jeremy months ago. I don't even remember. It was whenever we did. I think it was 28 days later. So it would have been like I mentioned it like over the summer. And I've been meaning, and I just thought you would be a great fit for this conversation. This seems like something that would be right up your alley. Are you familiar at all with Jeremy Saulnier's like other movies? Well, I guess it would be Blue Ruin. He did one called Murder Party in 2007, and then he's done a Netflix movie a couple years ago called Hold the Dark.
Yeah, so Hold the Dark, which was released to Netflix, is the only one I haven't seen of his yet. I think he's also directed a couple TV episodes of True Detective, right?
Yes. He did season 3.
Okay, so I haven't seen those either. I guess his more recent stuff I'm a little bit behind on, but his I don't know, I forget the name of the trilogy that he kind of refers to this as, but Murder Party, Blue Ruin, and then Green Room, all three I kind of like in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And have I don't know. There's something there. He's one of these directors I think that just kind of came out of nowhere and utilizes kind of everything I love about, in Green Room's case, punk rock, in Blue Ruin's case, the redemption thriller arc, and then a Murder Party, just the zany, over the top nuttiness of art students.
Yeah. And he's even if you go back to Murder Party, like he has an ethereal voice. Like you can feel his director's voice. Because I saw Murder Party, was probably the last one I saw. The first time I watched Murder Party was probably like only a couple years ago.
Fucking get him!
And then I actually watched most of it leading up to this podcast. But even then, in hindsight, when you go back to it, like you'd be like, oh, that actually feels like a Jeremy Saulnier movie. And it was interesting because my buddy Big Paul had got corona and he was in bed for like the past week, and I was like, hey, you should check out Blue Ruin. It's on HBO. Go check it out. And he watched it and he sent me a message. He was like, oh, this reminds me of that punk rock movie, the one with the punk rock kids and the Nazis. I was like, yeah, it's the same director. He's like, oh, no way. So even for somebody that's not really like hip or paying attention, like the texture was there. And I thought that was really cool because I thought that as well. I feel like he has a very distinct kind of voice as a director. no matter what the subject matter. And I do think like in some ways they kind of revolve around some similar themes in terms of like just human nature, and like it's usually man versus something. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like Blue Ruin is like man versus it's like, well, man versus guilt, and man like, you know, survivor's guilt and the concept of revenge and the never-ending cycles of violence. Green Room has a kind of a similar vibe to it in terms of that stuff. Like I think thematically what it's talking about in some respects is about the nature of art and how everyone's kind of a LARPer until they're not, especially taking advantage of the punk rock kids. And I have a special connection to this movie because I was in a band as a young guy and have some of these experiences, not playing at Nazi skinhead youth groups, but just some of the characters, it just rang really true. It's a very authentic feeling movie. Yeah. And those kind of things kind of are just, and same thing, Hold the Dark. I know you haven't seen it yet, but that's like kind of man versus nature, also dealing with like kind of the darker side of humanity a little bit wrapped up into that. It's way more literal because it's like, who's more of an animal, the wolves or a man? But
real quick, like what are your general thoughts on Hold the Dark? Because that's one where I believe it's based on a book or some source material. Yes. And it's probably a little bit more devoid in some ways, I guess, from like his past 3 films.
It's the most different. Okay. Yeah, it is, because you can tell that he didn't write it. I think that is very pronounced, but the style, as like his director's mark, is definitely there. Like the tone, the pace. I think it's his longest movie too. I think it's a little over 2 hours, and I think all of his other 3 movies are tight 90-minute movies. Actually, Murder Party's like an hour and 20 minutes. If I don't even think it makes it to, it barely makes it to feature length. So yeah, I enjoyed Hold the Dark. I think it's kind of a messy movie. It's a little messy. I don't think it sticks the landing, but the moment to moment experience of watching it, and Jeffrey Wright, who's like the star of it, is very good. And I'd say if you're a fan of Jeremy Saulnier, or I think I'm saying his name right, Saulnier.
That's, I mean, you're doing as better than I could, so you're fine in that department.
I would say it's definitely worth watching. Like if you're a fan of his movies, I think you would at least get something out of it, especially if you're coming at it just from like being a movie fan, like being a cinephile, if you will. I think you would get something out of it. And he's got a new movie coming out in a couple of years, Rebel Ridge, which is a high velocity thriller that explores systemic American injustices through bone-breaking action sequences, suspense, and dark humor. And he's got
all things he's pretty good at so far.
Yeah, hell of a cast. Got Don Johnson's going to be in it. James Cromwell's in it. So that should be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. He's a guy that I think I would always look forward to whatever he's doing next, even if I had been disappointed in what he had done before. Everybody swings and misses every once in a while, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting where he kind of gets his roots starting with something like Murder Party, which is now, I think in the last few years, has turned into a bit of a Halloween kind of go-to classic now.
Yeah.
What's so funny about that movie is that it comes from like a guy who quickly caught on to what he was seeing in his NYC film scene, and that was a lot of just pretentious artists thinking they know what's up and doing just like weird, sick, odd rituals in their own downtime, and totally making fun of that, but showing the cynical side of that a little bit, obviously. But
100%, 100%. He's goofing on that culture. But isn't he? Is he out of the Austin scene, or am I wrong?
I thought maybe I'm wrong. I may because I know he's all over the board in terms of just where he films his movies, but yeah, maybe I'll have to double check on that.
Yeah, I'm trying to look right now really quick so I look like I'm smart. It doesn't say where he's from. I just kind of, for whatever reason, I associate like him with the Austin scene. That's probably completely unfair, but like a lot of people have a kind of a similar style to him that are from that scene. I'm thinking in particular like Ty West, the guy who did You're Next, what's his name? Adam Wingard.
Yep.
The guys who did The Endless, and what the hell is that other movie they did? Shit.
Well, you saw Ty West is now making a sudden comeback too with a new movie coming out soon.
Yeah, I never know what the deal is with those guys. They show up for a couple years, they make like 3 movies, and they fuck off for 6 years.
Yeah.
Adam Wingard's the only one who's had like a consistent career, even though it's mostly been bombs up until Godzilla versus Kong.
Yeah.
Which he has had like potential hits like keyed up for him, and for whatever reason they just do not connect with audiences. I mean, Your Next was a flop. The Guest was a flop. The Blair Witch was a flop. Like huge flops.
And I've been a soft defender of that Blair Witch film for different reasons, apart from what I love about the original. But yeah, even then it's like, it's just flop after flop. I don't know what.
No, I'm not saying that those movies are bad. Those are all movies I enjoy to one degree or another.
Sure.
I think Your Next is actually pretty masterfully executed. I think The Guest is probably my favorite though. Just for whatever reason, I just really enjoy that movie.
Great soundtrack too.
Great. It does have a great soundtrack, actually. My wife has it on vinyl. We're hipsters. But yeah. But the movie in question here, Green Room. I've been a big fan of this movie ever since it came out. It's one of Anton Yelkin's last screen performances. Had you had a history with it before I brought it up to you? Or had you ever seen it before? I assume you had, right?
So it's interesting that we're finally covering a movie that was somewhat more recent compared to some of the other stuff we've been talking about in the past. I saw this this is 2015. So it would have been, I guess, my late sophomore year of college when it came out. And my college days, I'm spending so much money. I'm going to the movies like not even every weekend, like during the week, just like blowing off cash just to see whatever's coming out.
Yeah.
But this was one that, at the time I was definitely on the A24 train, like hard. So just anything that was coming out that looked of the A24 variety, I was kind of already immediately drawn to. I'd seen Blue Ruin before this when it hit Netflix, knowing that I had alumni from my film major who actually worked on that film before.
Oh, cool.
That got me into it and introduced me to Jeremy Saulnier. And so when I saw that this was dropped and announced, I grabbed a few buddies and we all just had a couple beers and just we had a good time. It was a suspenseful ride. I think I was more into it than the people I saw it with, though, just because it's not your average bottle thriller or like captive thriller or
yeah. I would say in classic A24 fashion, the trailer is a little deceptive.
Yeah, exactly.
The trailer sells you this very like hardcore, very every moment brutally tense. But I think this one is actually, it's way more, it's almost more disturbing because of how quiet it is at times and how actually kind of slow it is.
Yeah.
It just doesn't have a breakneck pace, which is always crazy to me because it's a 90-minute movie. It's like 95 minutes. And you feel those 95 minutes, but I think it's with purpose. It doesn't feel like it's wasted. And I think Blue Ruin feels the same way, kind of. Like in terms of pace, they feel very similar, but they were both sold as these like fucking wild thrillers.
Exactly. And that's what I kind of love about not having watched trailers for either of these. I went into them sort of blind.
Oh, cool.
Blue Ruin's an interesting one in that it kind of, on paper, should only be like a 40-page script because it's not a dialogue-heavy film at all. A lot of it is just sort of tension, suspense building, making Blair just like working up a sweat, not knowing what he's going to do next, learning how to use a gun. But because there's little dialogue, you kind of pick up from just all of the different cues and what's going on with these characters that come into his life. You pick up on what's going on very fast. There's a revenge angle to this. There's these different characters scattered around. Well,
he's got it's very similar into the Green Room in the sense that he's great at world building. He's great at environmental storytelling, and you don't have to explain very much because you just kind of you pick up so many context clues without even realizing that you are.
Yeah.
It's Blue Ruin's a ton of that stuff. Like you said, they barely fucking talk. It's all just about like the environment he's in constantly. And that does so much of the heavy lifting for the storytelling. And which is not like, that's very impressive to be able to actually pull that off with your set design and stuff, especially on movies of these kinds of budgets. Blue Ruin famously was like a Kickstarted movie to get a lot of its budget. Green Room was a studio film, but they had a little bit more money. I think they did this for like $5 million. But
Yeah.
I mean, once you get into the film proper, like once you get into like the Nazi compound, the Nazi youth compound, like it's a gorgeous set. Like it's meticulously crafted. The environment tells the story. It tells you everything you need to know. And maybe this is also a little bit of my own personal experience playing kind of weird shows in places like that. They kind of look like that, so I could smell it. It kind of took me back to my youth a little bit.
Fuck up! Nazi punks! Nazi punks! Nazi punks! Fuck up! Take I don't want.
I could smell it. I could smell all the BO and the beer and the booze and the blood and the ass.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it rang very true for me personally. But I think even if you didn't have that experience, I think like that personal kind of experience, I think that it would still do the same thing. I mean, it's very like visceral. The environments feel visceral.
Yeah, I'm sure you probably have you have a lot you can probably say about your own experience, just like being in a band and being around this kind of scene too. For me, at least, what resonated too as well, seeing it in Richmond, was that like half the time, if I wasn't going to the movies late at night, I'm going to see all the local bands at different clubs, different places, some as dirty as what you see in Green Room. You know, I wasn't getting into Benny mosh pits with beer until I was like 21, but you know, that's what is what it is.
Oh, you weren't like one of the straight edge kids like pounding Red Bulls and just trying to fist fight everybody when they were 17?
Well, yeah, I mean, with a few friends early high school, definitely. Red Bulls will do that to you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's like it's just one of his director's marks, and I think it carries through in everything he does. Even Hold the Dark, same thing. I mean, Murder Party, a little to less degree. You know, that's definitely a first time filmmaker, I would say. But holy shit, like, can you believe Blue Ruin is his second movie after Murder Party?
Yeah,
after Murder Party, I like Murder Party. I'm not saying, but it's not fucking Blue Ruin. Like.
Yeah.
Blue Ruin's like a nearly flawlessly executed movie. Except for maybe, you know, and he does have a thing, I would say also that like he doesn't give a fuck about contrivance. He's like, yeah, it's a little stupid. It's a little contrived, but the craftsmanship is so good that you kind of just don't care.
I think it's almost like there's just an everyman quality to his movies, at least his earlier stuff, because they're, whether you're coming at it as just a movie fan or movie watcher or an actual filmmaker, I think there's something that's relatable on both ends. I think you look at these kind of, I mean, and maybe this like adds to the casting too, but you just look at these people that are in these films, and you've definitely seen that person before in real life.
Yes,
that definitely like lends a hand into just what, when it's a suspenseful scene, what really encapsulates it, and then if it's just something that's more comedic, it's just very natural. Never feels scripted, never feels like off-putting, and I think that's just something
he gets especially with the Green Room cast, especially there's a great chemistry between everybody. Like, you know, there's some, you know, Anton Yelkin and Alia Shawkat being kind of like people that you would recognize. Imogen Poots at the time was not as high profile. She'd been in a few things. I think she had played like Michael Douglas's daughter in a movie like a couple years before.
She's doing a lot of stuff with Jesse Eisenberg these days. I don't know if you've noticed.
Is she?
They've done like 3 movies together now. It's a little not to go on a side tangent here. They were in
Imogen Poots. We could talk about Imogen Poots for an hour if you want.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, you know, connection to the last movie we watched. She is the girl from 28 Weeks Later.
That's right. Yep.
She's the young girl.
This is how it works with Zoobox or Flea Pit. Like all the movies, they find a way to line together.
Everything's connected. Yeah. Oh, that's right. She was in that awful Black Christmas.
Did you just? Not all men are rapists, Chris. Okay, I'm not. But you just lumped me in with the bad ones because I'm a man.
Nobody is calling you a rapist.
You apply it with your man-hating.
Man-hating? What did I say that was so offensive?
Just calm down. We're trying to have a reference.
Calm down? Yeah. You want me to calm down? Let's calm down.
Oh,
the new one.
Yeah.
Which is so bad that it's actually very entertaining, because of how bad it is.
That one was so bad that I watched it a few years ago. It was so bad that I ended up going back to the 2006 remake, which I think is now underrated. Yeah, not bad.
Not bad at all. Yeah. People shat on it when it came out, but I was like, well, do you guys like slasher movies? Like, that's what you're watching, a fucking slasher movie.
You guys like Christmas colors. Come on.
I always felt bad for that director. I can't remember his name offhand because he did Willard and then he did Black Xmas, and then nothing because he got basically put in director's jail because both of those movies bombed back to back. It's always felt bad for him.
And he was a big fan of the original Black Christmas to the point that he wanted to put all of these little references in there that nobody would catch if they weren't a fan of that original.
Same thing with Willard.
Yeah,
he was a big fan of the original Willard, and I like both of those movies. You know, no, they're not like the greatest movies ever, but I think they're very solid, especially when you think about it in the context of the time they came out, like that early 2000s horror.
Yeah,
you know, they're actually kind of stand above the crowd a little bit. But as far as casting goes, the one casting choice that I thought, even coming back to it, I was like, I don't know how I feel about it, is Patrick Stewart.
On filter. She's beautiful.
What's up?
Need some of the squad. Red laces only.
Tonight?
Now, the list. This is everybody who knows.
Yeah, including the band. Knows what?
Manageable. From here on out, not a single name gets added unless they have red laces.
Because he's just he's like beyond a celebrity. It's like there's a meta quality to casting somebody like Patrick Stewart. But I was very impressed with him in this movie, and I was almost kind of like surprised that he took the role because it's such a thankless role. It's very low key. He gets no big moments. This is another thing I really like about Jeremy Saulnier is that he does not linger on like I guess like the victims of violence. And he also doesn't make the bad guys cool. Like there's a version of Green Room where Patrick Stewart gets to like monologue like a Bond villain and bloviate and be very big and broad and evil, like, you know, in capital letters evil. And in this it's very low key. It's like everything's very subtle. He just doesn't have that big villain moment. He never does. And the way he dies is so unceremonious at the end of the movie. And I kind of love that about it. Like that's another thing that we were talking about. Like I know you didn't see the trailer, but the trailer sells this as like this very tight, intense thriller, and Patrick Stewart's in it, and Patrick Stewart's a Nazi, and it does not operate that way at all. And I kind of like that because it actually is, to me, was like it's more disturbing. So Patrick Stewart never having those moments, never having the movie moments that an actor might look for taking a role like this, actually makes his performance more scary to me because it's more real. Yeah, I've met some spicy characters in my day, and and this is way more like this than not. Back at like I had no idea. I was like 18, and I met a red lace guy. I had no idea what the fuck that was. No idea what that was. Met him at a punk show. At like a weird warehouse in Boston, Massachusetts, and like 2 a.m. watching art movies and punk bands were playing. And and they're very much it seems so cliche and stupid to say this, but like they're like normal people.
Sure.
And that's almost scarier than the caricature that we often build in our minds of people that we might disagree with or not like or whatever, you know.
I was gonna say, was it a pretty just quick, normal exchange? Like, hey, what's up? Oh, hey, and then go your separate ways, or was it a little bit?
Well, no, there was no tension there. He was just one of the guys there. I think he was friends with somebody that I knew, just because he like worked at like the hot dog place that was like around the corner. So we kind of knew who he was, and we just ended up hanging out with him. Yeah, and I came to find out later about the red laces and stuff like that, and I didn't know anything about that. I had no idea. And so when I saw that in this movie again, it was just like, oh, you kind of forget, like, they're kind of just like impressionable, dumb kids like everybody. And that's another angle of the movie that actually I think adds to the atmosphere and the tension, is that these are all kids.
Yeah, I was about to bring that up.
They're all like kids. They're just impressionable kids, and they have like this a father figure in people like Patrick Stewart that you know.
Looks like we tripped our main. Backup Jenny's fired. I bet we're gonna have to call it a day. Do some troubleshooting. We'll try again on Sunday. No door charge. Hell, free drinks from 2 to 4. Those of you attending the racial advocacy workshop on Wednesday, assume it's on unless you hear otherwise. And remember, this is a movement, not a party. All right. Stay safe. Godspeed.
This is a movement, not a party. Which I guess this is one movie like line, but
sure.
But yeah, like that atmosphere, the vibe of that is so unsettling. Like and it doesn't draw attention to it though, and that's what I like about the movie. That's what I like about the movie so much, is that it's so much is like understated about it.
Yeah.
Even the violence is understated.
Mm-hmm.
It's like very brutal and very raw, but it's just kind of there.
It's there, and it happens in places where you don't expect it either, too, which is also like a huge plus in my book for sure. But you even bring up, so going back to like Sir Patrick Stewart here, I too was a little apprehensive about seeing him in this when I heard he was, just from the cast listing before going in the theater to see it, and then eventually buying the Blu-ray to rewatch it and listen to the commentary and all that stuff. But he gives it like this very just even in the midst of all the violence and just what's kind of going on in the heat of the moment, he's got this very calm, very like odd cadence to him, and even in his voice, it's very croaky, a little bit hoarse. You know, because obviously he's trying to maybe hide his accent a little bit too in that, but doing that gives him a much more scarier presence.
There's a lot of nice subtle touches, character touches that I think Patrick Stewart brings to it, because, and this is I guess more life experience, but like real scary people don't have to act mean or scary. Yeah. And that's what kind of Patrick Stewart, I think, was doing with the character. Yeah. People that you should really be worried about are often very calm, especially in heightened situations, because they're not worried about it, or they're sociopaths. Yeah.
It's that very direct quality he has, like on the other side of the door. Like, we just need the unchucked gun, please.
Yeah. Oh my! Like some of the interplay there was great.
But he's gonna wait too.
Understood, gentlemen. Hold tight.
Hey there now.
I think they're smarter than you.
Darcy.
I apologize.
That's actually some of my favorite stuff with Patrick Stewart. Yeah. He's like, well, we can't very well talk to you if you have a gun in there. Like, because that's exactly what would happen. And then you would have a debate, because that's what it kind of acknowledges, this idea that like a normal person would find these circumstances so surreal, they would want to believe that person just to get out of it. Yep. Because they just want to believe that this is true, that if I give you this gun, it's all going to be okay. Even though you know deep down inside that's probably not true, but like your desire to survive just desperately wants it to be true.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's a lot of moments like that in the movie. They're naivete, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and that's like, you know, there's way too many times in any sort of like horror movie scenario where you want to just shout out the screen and yell at a character and say, "I would never do that." Like, what the hell is that person doing? This is one of those cases where there's a lot of clumsiness, there's a lot of clunkiness to the decision making and how people decide to go about things. At the same time, how well can you relate to being in a situation like this where you wouldn't make some irrational decision, as we see as the events unfold happen all too frequently with each character?
Well, I think it definitely walks that fine line of nothing they do feels stupid. It just feels like people that are overwhelmed and clearly over their heads, and they're kind of understandable flubs and mistakes. Sometimes that cost them dearly, you know? Yeah. But like it's never feels I never was watching it and be like, well, that's fucking stupid. Like I never felt like that in this movie, which I guess it's easy to feel like that a lot of times in genre movies, because so much of genre is kind of predicated on like just creating a scenario for gore or something. And I think this one does it pretty credibly. Yeah. You would be freaking the fuck out. You'd be fucking freaking out, dude. I'd be like Alia Shawkat from Arrested Development. I'd be like that character. That would be me, running around with a fire extinguisher, just blasting fools with a fire extinguisher, screaming. Like I mean, like even that great moment when they first leave the room and they go out and the fucking the dog's there. I mean, just that whole sequence is just so terrifying. And I like that he never plays it for cheapness. It's never cheap, and it's very oddly quiet, and it's just which is more disturbing.
Yeah,
and there's just like kind of a plainness to it because that's how those things really happen. That's how like fights really are. That's how like violence really is. It's not like this big, exciting, shocking affair. It's usually very quick, brutal, and then it's over, and then there's aftermath. You know,
you could treat this because it's like it's sort of a thriller where the Anton Yelchin character kind of compares this. He makes an analogy to an old paintball game he had way back when with some old vets.
We gotta treat this like paintball.
What?
Rick Silva helped organize the paintball for Skato's bachelor party. We were short a few players to book the whole field, so they paired us up with these ex-Marines. In the first few rounds, these guys just tore us to shreds. I mean, 0 casualties on their side. I just cowered behind these trees till I got shot, covered in paint. But Rick...
I agree. You done?
And then you were watching all the scenarios in place and you're thinking, well, this just feels like one big, like, yeah, like paintball or I don't know, capture the flag sort of event where it's like you have 2 factions here.
Yeah.
Both have an advantage and a disadvantage. And it's just like, who's going to make the move first? Because it's just,
it's a great way for a character to put it because he's trying to draw it to something that he has actual tangible experience with. And it's also there to like, it frees them to take chances.
Yeah.
Because they're so afraid. You don't want to do anything. You're like paralyzed. You know, you're in shock basically. And you have to kind of lighten up a little bit to even be able to try to get out of the room and try to get out of the compound. And one of the things I like about the structure of the movie is that it's constantly giving them solutions and then fucking taking them away in the most brutal fashion, forcing them out the front door. Like by the time they get out, they have to leave through the front fucking door. Anytime they try to get out in any other way, the characters get like, you know, fucking stabbed or eaten by a dog or shot. Like I really liked that because it's this constant like chess game, this constant give and take.
Yeah.
That's constantly going on. Because I would say like every 10 minutes, there's like a new idea brought up that they could possibly maybe utilize or do something to get out of the room or get out of the situation, and then they just take it away in like really horrific fashion. Then they have to scramble again to kind of reassess, like, well, okay, what are we doing? All right, now we got to figure out this other thing. And the movie is always kind of almost like in a mechanical sense, like uncovering new layers to the situation, making them dig deeper and deeper and deeper. And it even has like kind of this there's an old 30 Rock joke, which is like to get out of like the crevice, you must go deeper. And they're constantly forced back in the room, forced back into the bowels of this little compound to really kind of like face their enemies. They're forced to.
Yeah.
They don't get to just like walk away from it. Nobody gets away clean in this situation.
Yeah,
it's just really brutal, and I think even the ending of the movie kind of reinforces that, which is I think is a theme of Saulnier's work. Is like the cycles of violence, kind of the nature of reciprocity. Like you give violence to somebody, you will be met with violence in return.
So we're doing that.
Why else would we walk up here?
I don't know when I was gonna ruin the crime scene.
Oh, I thought we'd leave a new one.
It's a nightmare.
And it's just a never-ending thing.
Yep.
Because that's, you know, to go back to Blue Ruin, that's like very much writ large the subtext of the movie.
The dueling families, yeah.
Well, it's dueling families, but it's the nature of revenge. Like if you kill somebody to get revenge for something somebody did to you or your family, then you're going to create people that are going to want revenge on you. and then it's just never going to end. And that's the kind of, they find themselves in a very, not the same scenario at the end of the movie, but this idea of like, we have now become violent people.
Yep.
Imogen Poots just starts murking people, and Anton Yelkin's like, I guess we're killing people.
Yeah.
You know, you kind of just like give over to it, like almost in a certain way. It's kind of a depressing, it's kind of a downer of an ending.
Yeah. Oh, it's a bleak ride through, especially when you kind of just consider how the setup even kind of comes about here, because it's not until minute 20 where they actually even wind up at this reserve where they're hosting all these bands for these neo-Nazi skinheads. And you know, every time I watch it, there's always like that one moment where it's like, why did they leave their phone in the green room? They could have just left scot-free, nothing would have happened. It's that one little moment where it just triggers him, like, all right, hit 911 fast, and then everybody's in a frenzy.
Yeah.
And you know, it's funny how, again, like, it makes like both sides of the scenario, everybody's kind of imperfect and doesn't quite fully know what they're doing. I thought it was kind of cool, actually, a smart little scenario that I guess it was a mix of Macon Blair's and Patrick Stewart's idea, but the whole idea to cover up the stabbing, which is where it's all like, it all kind of starts to get the police to even come down there in the first place, and how they already have that knowledge that something happened, and they cover it up with their two twin skinhead boys.
Yeah, the true believers. Yeah,
exactly. They have no problem jabbing each other. It's just like, oh, wow.
Those people are real, dude.
They're there. Yeah.
People are out there. They're out there. Crazy motherfuckers.
I'll take one for the team.
Yeah, I was actually super stoked to see Macon Blair in this as well. Yeah. I really like Macon Blair, and actually he's actually not a bad director either.
Yeah, what's the film he directed with Elijah Wood and
Elijah Wood? That's what I'm trying to remember. It's something in the.
I'm here to.
Hold on, I'm going to bring it up right now. I don't feel at home in this world anymore. It was a Netflix film, and he's right now he's directing the Toxic Avenger remake.
Yeah, I'm so torn on that, dude, because it's like, just on the one hand, leave it alone, it's fine. Just on the other hand,
but you're curious, right?
I'm curious,
you know. And I think maybe with somebody like his sensibilities, maybe we get something interesting. Maybe we get something a little not what you're expecting from it. I don't expect some like big Hollywood movie out of the Toxic Avenger. If they can, I mean, I don't know. I mean, like the Toxic Avenger. I mean, on the real, like it's not a great movie. Like it's not a very good movie. It's a novelty. It's fun to watch, right?
Yeah. You get to watch, you know, kids' brains get run over and old ladies get beat up by a bunch of punks.
Yeah,
you know what you're in for.
Yeah, it's trauma, dude. It's crazy trauma shit, and it's a really good time.
Yeah. So,
but that's like by happenstance. That's like an accident that movie works because it really shouldn't.
No,
it's just the chutzpah. It's the vibe of the filmmaking. Like that's what's so fun about it. Mm-hmm. So if you were actually to be competently make that movie in a traditional, competent way, what do you get? I don't know. I don't know what you get if you make like a normal Toxic Avenger movie. You're gonna have to really bring something to it, man. You're gonna have to really bring something special to it.
It makes me wonder how raunchy or how hardcore they'll go with it, or if they're gonna just play to our times a little bit more and say like, yeah, let's.
I mean, Elijah Wood's in it, and I don't dislike Elijah Wood because I think he actually does a lot of cool stuff for film and filmmakers, and he's spearheaded a lot of interesting projects, and he's a big fan of genre stuff. But I have a feeling he probably leans pretty woke
these days. Probably.
I mean, like, am I gonna get all my topless, all the topless gym chicks? Peter Dinklage is in it. Kevin Bacon is in it. I think Kevin Bacon's the bad guy. Okay. I'm going to assume is Elijah Wood. Is he going to be the Toxic Avenger?
One would guess. Maybe they're hiding whoever they're casting as the main star. I don't know, but yeah.
Nobody has a title or character names next to their casting.
Yeah.
Except for Macon Blair, who's directing it. He's Dennis.
Yeah. But yeah, going back to
Macon Blair Macon Blair would be a good Toxic Avenger. But anyway, sorry.
He would be good. No, I was gonna say, going back to Macon Blair, like, yeah, he's always a guy that will. I think he's very, very outgoing with the independent film scene to a point that's like very generous. Honestly, like he'll just pop up and stuff I'll never expect to see him in. And if it's like a somewhat like maybe like a $2 million budget film, and he's just like there in the background as a minor character, or what was that film, The Hunt? From a couple of years ago, he pops up in that movie.
That's right. Yeah, he's in that for a couple seconds. Yeah, he makes a little cameo.
Yeah.
I think he just likes to work with his friends. It seems like, yeah, he just gets in his friends' movies. They're in his movies. See, like they're part of like a little community, I think, and that's why maybe I associate him with the Austin film scene, because all of those guys, all those actors, directors, they're all in each other's movies constantly.
Yeah.
Because it's like the same cast, the same directors, the same like almost like visual style. They all kind of have, which is, I guess, I mean, good and bad, I suppose. It's like in the way that A24 has almost a house style, like the Austin film scene has a house style.
Yeah.
Going back since like at least 2008. That's why I assume they were. I don't think they are though. I mean, Blue Ruins like takes place in like Maryland.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about that. Was like I was recognizing so many like locations where they were filming it too. It's like, oh, okay,
and Macon Blair's really good in Green Room. It's another just like subtle kind of soft performance, which I think he's kind of mastered at this point.
Yeah,
because he's phenomenal in Blue Ruin, and that's a performance that gets better like every time you watch the movie. Like it gets better.
Yeah.
But in this one, like another kind of low key role that could be a throwaway, thankless role, and I think he does some nice stuff with it.
Yeah. I was trying to get like a good grasp on his like I guess role within this group, because he obviously hasn't upgraded to red laces yet. He's kind of like a managerial sort of supervisor.
Yeah.
Kind of runs the money end of things, and it even like comes down to that final sequence with the two red laces who go after Imogen Poots and Anton Yelchin down in the basement area, and it cuts to him and he's just cleaning away, slaving away, just like getting rid of all the evidence of bodies and violence that had just occurred.
He's not a true believer. He's not a true believer, and I couldn't. Did you get the sense this is the first time? Because like I would imagine, and I think it's like contextually they kind of suggest this, is that you have to do something like this to earn your laces. You got to be involved in something that is like kind of forever damning to a certain degree. It's like if you want to join a gang, you got to shoot somebody, you got to execute somebody, that kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And he's not a true believer. Like he's doing it because that's just his environment.
Sure.
So many people fall into those kinds of things in their life where they're just like, these are who my friends are, who I grew up around. These are my friends. I guess this is what we do. Some people are more strong-willed than others, and they can't get themselves out of it. But yeah, because he's always kind of nervous and apprehensive as soon as like kind of the violence starts, and he's the one that kind of, I think he doesn't really know what he's going to do, and he doesn't know if they're going to kill them or not.
Yeah.
Until Patrick Stewart's like, no, they're all going to die.
Whether we like it or not. Yeah.
Like he's out there trying to get money to like give to the red lace kids and bribe them. At least that's what it comes off as. Maybe I'm reading that wrong. I don't know.
But yeah, like it's so perfectly in the script, just kind of brings up like past accidents that might have occurred with these guys before. There's the one neo-Nazi character, Daniel, who's got his own B plot, C plot going on with what was going on with Imogen Poots and her friend.
Yeah.
And the Worm character as well. But they discover, he's got this old bat that they used in some other accident at one point that never got hidden away, and like, all right, so who was not following orders in like when this happened? And
well, that's I was wondering if the Daniel character was supposed to be like an undercover police officer or something.
They never quite get into that. Yeah.
They don't get into it. I thought maybe it's implied because he's like preserved the bat, or maybe he's struck a deal. Maybe like they reached out to him and he's like, he's gonna turncoat on them.
Yeah.
Which is something that happens very frequently in these kind of groups, as we've seen especially in just the past few years. If you're part of a white nationalist group, there's probably a good chance that at least 30% of you are feds.
They should have all just like charged the green room with just tiki torches and CeeLo with that.
Oh my god. Yeah.
I don't know.
But yeah, it's got a lot of nice little touches like that. One of the things I would say actually about the Daniel connection, him, because his girlfriend's the one that gets murked when they find out she's gonna leave. or that they're going to leave. They kill her. Is that I wish that like that connection had been like seeded into the movie a little bit better, because it doesn't kind of exist. Like the connection doesn't exist, so there's never any tension about him finding out. He just finds out, and then he goes kind of nuts.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't know what's going on. He goes in there to assess the situation, sees that his girlfriend's dead, his secret girlfriend apparently. And then he's just like, oh, now I'm going to help you guys. I mean, I know he was going to leave. That's why I kind of thought, I was like, oh, maybe he's like somebody reached out to him, or maybe he's an informant or something like that. That's why I got that vibe. And then Macon Blair, I suppose, is potentially. Although I think that they're saying with Macon Blair, because isn't he the cousin of Tad, of the kid with the mohawk, the promoter from the original show? That when they when they start the movie and then they end up playing in the diner.
I'm always broke and I'm alone. I ask myself, what have I
That's probably
they're
right.
supposed to be his cousin. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know why I always draw the connection between him and Daniel for some reason, but I guess that would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, because he's like the promoter, basically. He's like the show. He runs the compound. He books the shows and takes care of the bar and does all the money and pays the bands and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah,
it's a crazy and I mean, again, all the little touches that kind of set things off, like even when things aren't even going completely wrong yet, it's like, oh, we're gonna sing a Nazi punks fuck off song just to mess with these guys, even though like you guys are like, you're there for the money, you're there for the gig, just do your set and leave, just don't. They love that girl. They're punks, they can't help
they're punks. Well, that was one of the things that I made a note of, is that, and I mentioned it very early on when we started talking about it. There's this essence of being a LARPer.
Yeah.
Oh, you were tough, and you're like out there, you're fighting the Nazi punks and stuff. Like, oh yeah, it's one thing to sing a song in a safe environment where nobody's going to touch you, and be all cool and badass and acerbic and aggressive. Yeah. But then when you're like really met with the real thing, it's very different. It's kind of like reminds me of like kind of activists, like modern day activists. Like, oh, it's very cool. Yeah, everybody's on the streets smashing windows and yelling slogans and stuff like that, because they kind of understand that they're probably not going to get any real trouble for it. It's not going to be any real like ramifications. And then they, in this, obviously get a little taste of the other side of that, which I think is supposed. I think it's supposed to be there. It's like another one of these subtle touches. Like he doesn't draw attention to the things that should be making you uncomfortable, because that's almost like a red herring. Like especially the first time you see the movie, and if you don't understand like what is going to be the incident of violence, what is going to be the thing that starts this? Is it them singing the song? That's something that might occur to you. Yeah. Rather than them just stumbling upon a dead body.
Yeah, it almost does. In fact, there's especially in the first like 25 or so minutes, like after they do their set, there's at least 2 or 3 sequences of just slow-mo moments of just being in that being in kind of in the rouse of things, I guess. You're just kind of lost in it,
in the music. Exactly.
In the music,
and that was something that it was noted in the commentary that Saulnier did by himself, that he was just like, he's like, I usually don't indulge in these kinds of things, but I just thought it was appropriate for the scene, because you kind of want to get wrapped up in the emotion, like you said, the soul of the moment, like what music is, like what being an artist is, what being a performer is, kind of the high of that.
Yeah.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of this is kind of based on his own experiences being in punk bands as a teenager and in college. Him and Macon Blair were friends from high school, I believe.
Yeah.
And they were both in punk bands and stuff. And like the Blu-ray only has like a very brief making of, other than the commentary. And I think, Macon Blair talks about that a little bit. Because he made Macon Blair audition for the role. What a bastard, huh? He didn't believe that Macon would be able to be a Nazi guy.
He pulled it off for his good friend.
But he made him go on tape.
Yeah. There's something I miss though a lot about like Blu-rays now, especially ones that I like go out of my way to buy, and then like the behind the scenes featurette is only 5 minutes long, and you're like,
Such a bummer.
come on, give me something more. Anybody.
Yeah, commentaries though. Those are the things that I'm really looking for. Like, I really want there to be a commentary.
At least, yeah.
And there's nothing more of a bummer than a bad commentary for a movie you really like.
Yeah.
Or the director to kind of reveal that they don't like this may be a happy accident.
Sure.
I got a little bit of that vibe. I was watching The Green Knight.
Okay.
Which I enjoyed. I liked The Green Knight. And then the more I listened to David Lowery, the director, talk, I was like, I don't like you. And now I'm starting to think maybe some of this was not as intentional as maybe I thought it was.
What did he have any? Okay, so it's the middle portion of that movie I don't really quite care for as much. I love the first third, and the last third I think is outstanding.
Oh yeah, the sequence, the big sequence.
But that whole downtime with Joel Edgerton and the Alicia Vikander lookalike, which I'm still kind of torn on.
No, yeah, well, it is Alicia Vikander. She just plays both roles.
She just played, yeah, okay. Yeah, what? How did he summarize that whole section? That's it. Like,
because he wanted to make it basically turn it into a coming of age story, which I think maps onto it. It's like kind of because it's got that loose. If you're familiar with Aetherian Legends, if you've ever read that stuff, a lot of it's very episodic. It's very loose.
Mm-hmm.
It's about little tiny moral lessons that you learn on the way, and it's about it's about Sir Gawain learning how to be a man, how to be a knight, how to accept responsibility, how to be actually virtuous, and not just be doing it for selfish reasons.
Yeah.
And not looking for a magic way out. It's basically the whole thing is just a metaphor for accepting adult responsibility. Sorry if it burst everybody's bubble, but that's what that movie is.
Sure.
I think my last letterbox review of it was like, yo, he got cum on his magic sash. But yeah. But yeah, that's it, because it's all about him being tempted and like him having to deal with kind of moral dilemmas of like helping ghosts and chasing the magic fox and riding with giants. I'm very curious. Apparently there was a cut of that movie before the pandemic that is drastically different than the one that came out. And it was the one that was supposed to premiere at South by Southwest. And then they completely re-put the movie together, I guess. Just tore it all apart. Added a bunch of stuff, a bunch of like effect shots and stuff like that.
Sure.
Like apparently the giants were not in the movie.
I can kind of see that, and I could probably even believe the fox maybe not being in the original cut either, because that felt like such an added.
He's not
touch.
in it as much. Yeah. Not in it as much for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think overall I like the movie. I just there is just something for like just the pretentiousness of what you're doing when you're just like, dude, it's like, why do you got to say it like that? You know, maybe that's just me. I'm just being a jerk, but it really turned me off. I was like, because I've actually I never heard David Lowery speak before, and I had in the past I've defended A Ghost Story, which most people think is just the most pretentious bullshit that's come out in the past decade. But you know what? I thought it was pretty good. I actually enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's an art film. It's interesting about the passage of time and life and what your life means to the spaces you occupy. Some interesting stuff there. Give it a chance out there, kids, if you haven't seen it. It's what's his name? It's got that Affleck kid, that Casey Affleck's wearing a sheet.
The whole time.
Whole movie.
Performance of a lifetime.
Yeah, just standing around in a sheet. Imagine the paycheck, you know?
Yeah.
That's a living right there, Jeremy.
Yeah.
If I was going to be an actor, that's what I want to do. But no, I just want to be a ghost, like Casey Affleck in A Ghost Story. My lines, excuse me, just show me my mark, okay? Thank you.
Yeah.
Where can I stand as still as humanly possible?
Yeah. Have champagne in between shots.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Hanging out. I'll just record Zoobox podcasts. I'll just Skype you.
Yeah. No, but that's the thing. Like with any director that has a very pretentious angle with all their films, where they over-explain or overanalyze what they do. I just never been able. If anything, especially with the things I work on every year, I don't have enough to say really about what even like a film like Tape Deck, which I released recently. Like I just kind of leave it out there for people to kind of.
Yeah, and I think there's also a part, especially when you do stuff like your film, your short, their Tape Deck. And I'm not saying this is how you feel. Sometimes you just don't even know.
Yep.
You're kind of just vibing. You're just going with it.
I'm reading the room. Yeah.
You're trying to create a tone or a feeling. Sometimes that's more important in terms of like trying to communicate something to people than just having like some super specific point. Oh, it's really deep. It really means something very deep and profound to me. It's not to say that you don't care about it or anybody doesn't care about the things they do, but sometimes you just kind of intuit things and you just kind of go with it. And that's okay. And that's an acceptable answer. That's one thing I've always really liked about David Lynch.
Yeah.
David Lynch does not care at all to fucking explain himself. And I love that. I truly, truly adore that. I love that. It's like that interview he's giving and he's like, yeah, I think, Eraserhead's my most spiritual film. They're like, care to tell us why? And he's like, no. I love
Next question. Come on.
Yeah, next question. I mean, because then that's the whole thing. I mean, did you watch? Are you at all into like David Lynch or Twin Peaks or anything like that?
I'm pretty well read on David Lynch, though. Twin Peaks is one of those things I need to set aside time for because I have not gone too deep into it yet.
It's a super acquired. It's a thing. It's either you're gonna like it or you're not going to. But when he did the Twin Peaks: The Return, he did an 18-hour David Lynch movie that is reflective of David Lynch's career in the time after he made Twin Peaks. So it's like nothing like it doesn't feel like Twin Peaks at all. It just feels like a David Lynch thing. And it's abstract and it's weird and you're invited to kind of draw your own conclusions. And that's what's great about it. And I wish more people were like that. I wish more direct. I just feel like everybody just wants to come out and just tell you why what they did is the most important thing in the world.
Yeah.
And it's just not necessary. Like, let other people do that for you. If it's good, they will. If it's good, they will. People will do it for you. You don't have to do it yourself.
You wait, though. I will one day make films that will save lives, in the millions. I'm gonna ride that hill when it comes.
Yeah. Me too. When I'm the director of Star Wars 14, I'm telling you, be saving kids. Gonna be saving confused teenagers all around the world because I'll finally give them the representation they deserve. You know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make sure there is a main character that represents every single human being on the face of the planet. It's going to be an ensemble cast of about 6,000 people. It's going to be great. It's going to be great.
Well, speaking of representation, I hope there were like a good number of like neo-Nazi skinheads who felt kind of represented in this movie because
you think they felt seen? They often don't get screen time. When was the last time American History X? Was the last time they were on the movies?
Because we got to also remember the time that Green Room kind of comes out. Now, this is just like on the cusp of Trump era and
MAGA,
things like that
MAGA
country. And I loved this film at the time, and I couldn't get a lot of my friends into it. And then like once tensions and like started to get higher,
Charlottesville happened.
Well, or even up until that point. But like, imagine being on like a college campus and like a lot of your peers are like in full TDS mode, and you're just trying to
you're
have
just
a good time.
You're just trying to, exactly. You're just trying to like watch movies and appreciate art, and they just everybody wants to talk about is fucking Donald Trump, and you're just like, and Hillary Clinton, and you're just Bernie Sanders. Like, I don't care.
Yeah,
get away from me. I feel that, buddy.
Yeah, I was watching this again. Like, I was just like reminded of just hating being on a college campus.
Well, it's the thing actually about this is that it's surprisingly not that political.
It's not. That's the thing. There's an interview though where Jeremy does say like if he were to make it a couple years after, it could have been much more.
Yeah, because that would have probably been in the subtext of his life and the way what he was thinking about and examining. It would definitely probably would have been into it more. But he did make a point though. He's like, because there is tons of neo-Nazi hardcore punk bands. There's a lot of them actually. Yeah. It's a pretty as vibrant a scene as that community is going to have with anything. And he made it a point to like not include any of that music or do any of that stuff and not actually have them benefit from him making a movie about neo-Nazi characters at all. Because I think American History X has if I'm not mistaken, I think it has like a real neo-Nazi punk band in the movie.
Okay.
So I think there's
a few years.
It's been a while. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's been like 5 or 6 years since I've watched it.
Yeah.
But I have a sense memory of there being a sequence where they're watching a punk band. I could be wrong, guys. I could be wrong. Hey, if it exists, it'll probably be cut in right now. But yeah, like I was surprised that they're bad guys, and you're not supposed to like them, and that obviously they're neo-Nazis, they're skinheads. I like that the movie accepts the fact that the audience will immediately be like, I don't like these people, and I don't need it to be explained to me in explicit detail and constantly pointed out to me that they're evil neo-Nazis. Because at some point, the neo-Nazi angle just kind of dissipates. You really care. It's like doesn't factor into what's happening at all. Like at all. Like you could replace them with any type of like violent group or a gang or whatever. There's a version of Green Room with rappers.
Yeah.
Because
it all revolves around a misunderstanding to some extent.
Yeah.
And everybody is like at risk at this point, which is the other thing that I think is so powerful about that dynamic between the two sides, if you want to or how some of the signs overlap and conjoin with one another, because it's not like there's a scenario out there where this could have ended in 10 minutes. They just break down the door. Everybody's just fighting for their lives, but they take a much more methodical stance and back up a little bit and take their time. I guess because it's weird.
Even though like it doesn't, we don't get a lot of time with some of like some of the Nazi characters. We get we get enough time with a few of them. They are they have a sense of self-preservation, right?
Yeah.
They're people. They understand this is real. We could die too. We don't want to die. How can we do this and not die? You're a kid in there with a fucking gun. You're gonna just bust down the door? No, So yeah, there is a tension on both sides about just the notion of like having to live through this experience, no matter who comes out on top,
Yeah,
and that's very present and real, I think, throughout the movie. It's just it doesn't. Do you think it I don't think it humanizes really the characters. Honestly, maybe it doesn't really humanize any of the characters.
No,
there's a cold distance in the movie. Like it feels a little distant, right?
I think on one hand, it's like they learn new things about themselves they never knew before, which is like this either it's like a survival instinct that's now ingrained in them or has to be in them, and then also sort of like this acceptance that like they're kind of rushed for time, even though that this happens over the span of a night through the morning. That they don't have time to really settle down and grieve their losses or their loved ones or their bandmates or friends. They gotta just get out of there and at whatever means necessary. And to the point that maybe the solution is just to act really crazy because that'll freak them out and divert their attention in different ways, which does kind of work.
Give me the shotgun.
I got the shotgun.
And you go down this fucking hole. 3 shots.
Yeah.
You hear me fire twice, you come down no matter what.
This is a trap.
Yeah, no shit. You want to go tell Darcy?
In many ways.
It does work a little bit, right? Because those are people. Like you could say like, are they skinhead guys? For sure. But they are people. They're not that much different than you. They're really not. And they might be freaked out by the same things you would be freaked out by.
Yeah.
And also, like, just going back to like we were talking about, just kind of the nature of pretentious artists. I do like that the movie kind of opens with them being pretentious punk rockers.
Yeah, no, I really dig the analog style, which brings me to the fact you guys are hard to find. Want to know social media presence?
That's because booking more shows, selling more records would blow. It's not hard rock.
No one wants to starve, but when you take it all virtual, you lose the texture.
What do you mean texture?
Just, you gotta be there. The music is for effect. It's time and aggression.
Technical wizardry.
And it's shared live. And then it's over.
Yep.
About like they won't go online. They won't. Everything's got to be like, you know, they gotta print their own records, and it's got to be tangible because there's something. Which, by the way, I do agree with to a certain degree.
I do too. I do.
Yeah, I do. I do. Like I have an affinity for that stuff, and I do think it is different.
Yeah.
You know, we're probably of the last generation of people that are ever going to have that experience with like real practical things that we hold in our hands that also are art and play music and records and things like that. So I do agree with them, but it was interesting to me. And I love that the grace note at the end of the movie, because the movie kind of starts with them being interviewed by that Tad kid for his college radio station, which is an experience I've had plenty of times in my life, and asking them about the desert island bands. And they all answer, which is funny which is another thing that kind of clued me into that they're a little bit of LARPers, because one of them says the Misfits. And I like the Misfits, but it is the most stereotypical cliche answer you could possibly give.
Yes.
If you guys are the hardcore fucking punk band, the true artists, and you're fucking dropping the Misfits as your
Well, it's funny though, because I think Jeremy Saulnier, if I remember the commentary, and I see this day to day, is like, you know, especially genre heavy bands, if you really have like a one-on-one with them and you talk about some of their favorite music, odds are they probably would pick like,
you like a lot of pop music.
They would put pop music, or they'll name drop like, you know, music that is unlike anything that they make or produce. Usually,
Yes.
and, you know, not all the time, but like you'll be surprised like what kind of music.
Well, because
really...
that's usually why they're interesting, because their influences are not coming from people that are playing the same things they are. And that's what makes them interesting. And so I think that's an excellent and totally fair point that you've just made there. And I think it wasn't like I was drifting in and out of sleep during the commentary when I listened to the commentary like years ago when I bought the Blu-ray. And this is the first time I listened to it again since then.
So it is a little mellow.
It is very mellow. I wish Macon Blair was there, because I bet you it would have been really fun. No, but I love the grace note at the end of the movie where Anton Yelkin's character is like,
I know what it is.
What is?
Our desert island band.
Tell somebody who gives a shit.
Yeah.
And that's the last line of the movie. It's great.
And then Creedence Clearwater Revival plays, and then you're like, all right, well, one of them likes that band, I think.
Well, I guess it implies that's his desert island band, which, you know, hey, it's not a bad one.
Yeah.
Not a bad one. It's not something I would think to suggest, but if I was really thinking about it, you know, I don't ever turn the station when Creedence comes on. You know?
Yeah. Well, so I felt like this was gonna hopefully come up at some point, but let's say Shaun, what is your desert island band or bands if you had to name a few?
I
was giving some thought too for this review.
I'm a man of simple pleasures, Jeremy, and there's one band. I'm like awful with like finding new bands and listening. I'm like only listening to things like when I was like 25, I like stopped looking for new music. There's just too much of it out there. So my desert island band for me is very easy. It's Queens of the Stone Age.
Okay.
Queens of the Stone Age is my all-time favorite rock and roll band. Soundgarden is a close second. I was very into Soundgarden in high school before I got into the Queens of the Stone Age.
Nice.
And I really like a lot of punk stuff. I don't know. I like a lot of like kind of like energetic punk music.
Yeah.
Even in the past few years, there's been some good stuff. There's a guy, he passed away. He's an Australian dude, Jay Retard. Yeah, that's his. Awesome. I think obviously his stage name. Yeah. But he has a song called "My Shadow." I suggest everybody look it up. It is a great fucking tune. It's a banger, as they say. He has an album called Blood Visions. It's really great.
Yeah.
What is yours? Do you have one? Do you have a Desert Island band?
Yeah, like I was giving this some thought.
Purple Rain soundtrack. I got you, buddy.
Yeah, well, Prince does get name dropped in here. Some of the other options, and Simon and Garfunkel and a few others.
Hey, dude, Prince is pretty rad.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I was thinking, I don't think I would want it to be some of my favorite bands, because then I feel like if I was stuck on this desert island for years upon years, I would really hate them and want to murder them. So I wanted to go with something just a little bit more classy and timeless. So I was thinking probably like someone like Nick Cave, honestly.
Oh shit, yeah. Yeah.
You can throw the bad seeds in there if you want, but just Nick Cave in particular.
Yeah, well, I mean, because he's got such a deep catalog too. It take a long time to get through that music, and it's a he's contemplative music where you could like actually reflect on it quite a bit.
Yeah,
that's a great choice. Yeah.
He's an interesting guy. He's seen a lot. He's been to a lot. And then I was thinking also maybe like if I had to pick something a little bit more of just the alternative variety, but like New Order maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
I'd have to think about it.
Yeah.
But those are just, I mean, it was just like 10-minute thoughts I had when I was watching the film.
Oh, sure.
It'll change.
I almost got to go see Nick Cave. And and then COVID happened. We had tickets and everything. I go see him in Atlanta. And fucking COVID happened. We're so bummed. Because it's usually very hard to get tickets to Nick Cave, and he doesn't tour very often anymore. And what a bummer! What a bummer! Look what the Chinese took from me.
China,
your damn laboratories and your damn bats. Sick of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, but I like that. Like going back to just the cast and going back to kind of the early goings of the movie. It's like I think they had a great chemistry, and they do feel like a band, and they actually played the songs, they practiced together, which is interesting because some of those people were cast very last minute.
Mm-hmm.
Alia Shawkat, I think, was cast like 2 weeks before they started filming.
Okay.
Yeah, and Anton Yelkin was kind of familiar with playing guitar, kind of not, and he kind of I think he was the first one cast.
Yeah,
in the movie.
I recognize Joe Cole. He was like one of the Peaky Blinders, I think.
Is that what he's in? Is that what he's from?
That's the only thing I know him from, like in particular. But yeah, and then I think even the Worm actor, he's also in Blue Ruin. So some of these are actually regulars that Jeremy Saulnier and Macon Blair have worked with before.
Oh
and
yeah,
you can tell, like if you make good friends and have good chemistry with people on set, you're always going to want to bring them back on.
Yeah,
which I love that energy. In general,
me too. Well, it makes you look forward to even seeing their new movies because you just like seeing. I don't know. You kind of pick up a tone and a vibe, like in terms of like I like watching people make things and it seems like they're having a good time, like that they're enjoying the experience of making the movie and like on a meta level. Mm-hmm. I always like that. Whether no matter the subject matter or whatever, you could just kind of tell sometimes. You just like there's a comfort there, there's a understanding there. That you generally sometimes comes across on screen very well. And I think with Saulnier's films, at least the past, well, at least especially with Blue Ruin and Green Room, I feel like there's a real continuity there.
Yeah. Oh,
it's a pretty good double bill because I did it. So
yeah, there you go. No, there's still a looming sense of humor in some of this too. For a film that is as bleak as it is, I still, in many ways, kind of laugh at this Nazi dog just kind of wandering off until. He finally finds his owner. There's something so.
Oh, but the movie's full of these absurdly funny things because they're real absurd. It's like the truest sense of absurd. Like you're in this ridiculous, absurd situation, and like the guy that they're trapped in there with for the first or the second half hour of the movie. That guy's very funny. Like a lot of the things with him are kind of funny.
Yeah, try and search me, faggot.
Yeah. He's like a petulant child at times, right?
Yeah.
And he like breaks the phone. He throws at him like a baby throwing his rattle. Like there's a lot of stuff like that in the movie for such a movie that's so, like you said, so bleak. There's a little bit of a sense of humor there. There's it's very light, a little light touch. Even Patrick Stewart gets some lines. I'm not going to say it on the podcast, but whenever he says N-word dope,
really have to stay away from that nigga dope. It's a bad batch doing the rounds.
Just hearing Patrick Stewart say that. Kind of makes me giggle a little bit.
It's a good contrast with like probably his more mainstream personality if you just play them side by side.
I know. Well, that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what's and that's why you cast somebody like Patrick Stewart. It is a little bit of stunt casting, right? And also, I think they were big fans of Patrick Stewart. On the commentary, Saulnier is like kind of like just so giddy that Macon Blair gets face palmed into the wall by Patrick Stewart. He's like, that is like the greatest moment of my life. My best friend got face palmed into a wall by Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart wasn't even scripted to do that.
He was just in a bad mood, and I gotta give props to Patrick Stewart though, like because he did not give a showboat performance, which, like I said before, is what you expect when you cast somebody like Patrick Stewart. And Patrick Stewart has probably done that in other movies, where he was big and broad and a little over the top scenery chewing. There are so many moments like he could chew the scenery, and they just don't. They just don't. So natural.
Even right down to just how he goes out at the end. It's such this like he's like, all right, I give up, walks off, just like immediately knows he's probably gonna die in this moment, but takes one like last shot and then I'm out.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah,
beautiful.
and for as as violent and gory as the movie is, it never feels gratuitous. I never got that gratuitous sense from the movie because it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't linger. And I think this was a point that Saulnier was making on purpose. He didn't want to glorify victims or the violence done to people. It's not about glorifying them. It's because it's more, like I said before, it's like more realistic.
Yeah.
It's fucking quick. It's over with. And then you were left to stew in the aftermath of it.
Yeah.
It's not this long drawn out thing. It's not a John Wick fight. It's not like that. That's not how real life is.
Sure.
And I thought it was very well represented in the movie. And it's disturbing. That to me, that makes it actually disturbing because it actually felt real.
Yeah.
And so many movies don't do that. So many genre flicks don't do that. They just like kind of, I mean, I know people like to criticize the torture porn era of that Eli Roth, I guess, popularized a little bit with like Hostel and stuff.
Yeah.
While those movies, well, actually, he repopularized them. I'd take that back. Like he brought it back into the zeitgeist. It had kind of gone away in the 90s. We weren't really doing that anymore in the 90s for most of the 90s. And he kind of brought it back into the zeitgeist. Well, I think those movies are fine. I don't have a problem with those movies. There is something to be said about that they almost seem silly when you watch a movie like Green Room. Because like it is silly. Like people would not, it's just not how it happens, dude. It's just not like people with blood gushing everywhere and people screaming bloody murder. It's like, no, you fucking get hit with a sledgehammer and you fall and you're dead.
Yeah.
That's it. It's over.
Yeah.
You're
out. Yeah. Because again, it doesn't linger. The sharp contrast is that it doesn't really linger on the deaths as much, but when you do see the bodily injuries that can and will happen, like Anton Yelchin's arm getting sliced up, which is already a scary scene in and of itself, that you can't see what's going on beyond the door.
Yeah,
you can just imagine what's going on, and then you see what the aftermath of that.
Oh my God! Yeah! Keep it up! Put it up! Yo, help me move the couch!
Like that sticks with you. It's like those little images will stay ingrained, and then you know what these people are all about.
No, it doesn't shy from the violence. Like it shows you the consequences of violent behavior. 1000%. It shows you the consequence of pulling the trigger on somebody, of hitting somebody with a machete, of a dog fucking going for your throat. Which actually, that's the shit that like made me like, made me cringe a lot watching the dog like chew on the kid's neck. Oh my God. But like, yeah, no, it doesn't like shy away from it. It shows it to you. It shows you the reality of violence. It just doesn't indulge in it, I suppose, in a way that ever felt gratuitous. It always felt pointed, and it's there for impact. It's there actually for the emotion of it, the feelings of it, to try to, and not so you go, oh, like you do in some horror, like you would in a normal slasher movie, like, oh my God, and like it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun when you watch like something like Hostel, and somebody's getting their eye gouged out.
Yeah,
it's so over the top, it's so ridiculous. But in this, it's like so like you like feel it.
Yeah,
at least I could, anyways. Maybe it's because I've been punched in the face, and I just know, like you get punched in the face and you fall.
Yeah.
Like that's that's the way most fights go. They're
Yeah.
not like I said, they're not these long drawn out.
Getting
events.
headbutted is not fun. I can tell.
No, it's not.
No, that also kind of speaks to just like the theater experience I had when it first came out. Is that had I watched this with a bunch of like, I don't know, 13-year-olds in the front row shouting throughout the whole thing and making disgusting noises as during every gory scene or whatever. I wouldn't even just like alerted the theater staff. I would just kick those kids out.
Well, you kind of mentioned before that like it was a movie that like was not like embraced by a lot of people in your crowd at
Not
the
as
time.
much.
Like I was just kind of curious what were people like feeling? How were they feeling about the movie? Because I actually have no idea.
Well, at the time, it's like a lot of some of my friends, at least, like they went into it and went out of it, I guess, thinking it was just another generic sort of hostile torture porn thriller type, without having seen many of those films of that kind of genre or variety. So they were just not as in tune. So this was just another, you know,
I gotcha.
Pulled out of the bag. But like, I don't know. I mean, this happens all the time. Like certain crowds, like I'll go see fucking Mike Flanagan's Dr. Sleep, and I'll leave that film thinking that was stupid. And then the whole crowd's like, Jeremy, what are you talking about? You totally didn't get the message. I'm like, no, I've read The Shining. Dude. I've seen the original Kubrick movie. They're two different fucking.
Oh my god, yeah, Dr. Sleep was disappointing. I'll say.
Yeah,
I don't despise it, but that last act, holy shit. One of the dumbest fucking things. I was almost okay with it up until the last act. I'm almost okay with it, but
if you were sitting in the theater with me, you would have heard like a very slight groan going, "Ugh."
What do you mean when the fucking
when Jack shows up,
the Shining Avengers show up at the end of the movie? Like you're like, what the fuck? So stupid. Like it's so fucking, and it was just so Mike Flanagan could jerk Stephen King off.
Yeah, honestly.
He's like, oh, you know how Kubrick didn't make the movie you wanted him to make? Well, I'm going to fix it for you, Steve. I'm going to fix it for you. I'm going to end the movie.
Yeah.
Like the book. Like the book.
Rose the Hat was the villain. That's so dumb.
Well, the story, the book itself is not very good either.
Yeah.
But like actually the book and the movie are very similar. In the first like 2/3, you're like, okay, I'm intrigued. We're going along. I like seeing Danny Torrance again.
I like his plight, at least. Like he's going through some stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. I like the idea of doing a sequel to The Shining with the fallout of Danny Torrance. Like what happened to Danny Torrance? It's actually kind of a rich topic. The psychic vampire stuff, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I will say though, in that scene in Dr. Sleep when they pick up that fucking kid, that kid from that's playing baseball.
Yeah.
They pick him up in the van and then they suck the life out of him. Actually, very unsettling. Maybe that's because I'm a dad. That could be dad. That could be dad vibes, dad energy. But that scene really unsettled me. Because he asked Rose the Hat, he's like, is this going to hurt? And she's like, yeah. And then they just like start tearing at him. And she's like, oh my God. That did get me. You got me, Mike Flanagan, okay?
Yeah.
I think you're best suited to the Netflix series. Stop making movies. But
just white van pedos who call themselves Rose the Hat. Gosh.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm a fan of this movie. I'm a fan of Saulnier's. Where do you think this fits? If you were to rank the 3 films of his that you've seen,
I got to go with Blue Ruin at the top.
Me too.
Just
Me
from
too.
There's just a slightly more relatable quality to having have a lot of things that may not all go together too well just fit naturally in the moment. I bet for sure there was like a ton of mistakes made on set and a lot of imperfections that
of course
might have gone overlooked, but that make that movie just even stronger and much more compelling. And again, it's like that captures the spirit of the everyman quality better than maybe even Green Room does to some degree, even though I think they're all very good at doing that.
Yeah. I think it's because there is no main character to really latch onto in Green Room.
Yeah.
I never feel like I get to know anybody very well. And with Blue Ruin, it's so specific and so like singular. It's all about Dwight. It's all about Dwight getting revenge. and the fallout of what he thinks is getting revenge and how that
Yeah.
plays out. So you follow a character and you follow an arc of a character and him having to deal with things. And this, like, we get an introduction to the characters, which I wouldn't even say all of them are very likable.
Not necessarily, no.
They're kind of, like I said, there's kind of a coldness. There's a distance between like me as an audience member and the characters because they just don't feel very well etched. They're a little archetypal, maybe a little too archetypal. So I don't have much of an emotional investment in Green Room. I'm more impressed by it by like just the mechanics of it.
Yeah.
That I appreciate more. Whereas Blue Ruin, I am emotionally invested in that story.
Yeah.
You know?
And then, and I think most people would probably do the same here, but Murder Party's got to be the third, just because.
Yeah,
you can still tell at the end of the day, it's a thesis film of a sort.
Yeah.
A funny one, an ambitious one, and probably one that wasn't really getting made amongst those kinds of film circles. I love the image of the main character in that, just kind of shredding a guy's head open and just gratuitous blood just coming out. But it's a much more goofier tone, and you just got to kind of know what you're in for with a movie like that specifically. Whereas I think Blue Ruin and Green Room, you'll probably get more up to speed with as a casual viewer. But
yeah, I totally agree with you. I think Murder Party is like, do you specifically like these kinds of genre movies?
Yeah,
like to really kind of enjoy it, and you kind of just enjoy it almost just for what it is. You just kind of have to just accept it. But yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, Blue Ruin, Green Room, Murder Party. I'd put Hold the Dark would be after Green Room for me. Yeah.
Okay.
Just it's not bad. It's not a bad movie at all by any stretch of the imagination. It's the hokiest of his movies. I think he should probably just write his movies.
Was Macon Blair involved with that one? Or
I don't think Macon Blair's in Hold the Dark, actually. He went Hollywood, Jeremy. He went fucking Netflix, dude. And the same thing that happens to all directors that work with Netflix, there is nobody there telling them they can't do something, and that's a bad thing, Necessity is truly the mother of invention. It can bring the best stuff out of you. And when somebody's just like, yeah, go ahead, here's a blank check.
Yeah.
And they're all, did you ever notice that about those Netflix movies? They're all like over long. Even Michael Bay, they let Michael Bay he makes like another 3-hour movie. What is Michael Bay doing making 3-hour movies? Started with the Transformers, I know, but still. Rein these guys in, okay?
Yeah, we gave Zack Snyder that pass. You want your 4-hour cut? Fine. We enjoyed what we enjoyed, but like that doesn't mean you can start handing all these other directors like these 3.5-hour projects and just.
Well, it's almost every single one of them. They're like, oh, that's an interesting director. Cool. Like I'm glad they're getting a platform. Or it's even like Adam Wingard. He did what Death Note,
which I see more people defending nowadays. I have not actually seen it, but
it's not apocalyptically bad, but it's not good. And people that are defending it they're liars.
They hate themselves.
They're liars.
Yeah.
People give a lot of things a passes these days. I think it could be for me. It could be an age thing too, like for sure. But I'll tell you what, I'm pretty cool. I watched the Death Note anime, and I watched the anime because I liked Adam Wingard and I heard he was making the movie. So I watched 36 episodes of the anime. So there you go. I did my due diligence, and I think you failed, Adam. You fucked it up, dude. No, it's just kind of a very messy movie. It's very like tonally and not paced very well, and the tone's kind of off. It never was able to like settle into a good thing with that one, which was unfortunate because I was looking forward to it because I was a fan of You're Next and The Guest, and it was kind of a swing and a miss.
Yeah.
Even like you, though. Even like you, I will give a light defense of Blair Witch. I don't know if I'm going to go completely to bat for it, but I'll bunt for it. I'm not going to try to slam it.
I will never count it as canon. I think the original Blair Witch is still so.
It's on its own.
It's on
an island. It's on an island. Yeah.
And when you see like Eduardo Sanchez and those guys, whenever they'll hide like oh, we know what really it's all about, or like what really happens at the end, but we're not going to tell you guys. That's just your first tell sign that they just didn't know what they were doing when they were.
Well, I think the Blair Witch is very much a happy accident. I've seen their other stuff, and I've seen the lore that they were building around Blair Witch, and it's awful. It's like just cheesy, shitty stuff. I thought the Adam Wingard stuff, like it gets interesting. I like in terms of it's like a science fiction horror movie. It ends up being like a sci-fi horror movie about like wormholes and time loops and that's when the movie was actually kind of fun. But I thought it was like it tried to be like too much like Blair Witch.
Yeah, for a little while you wanted it to have its own identity or something, just to not like, or even have it be a surprise reveal that it was in the Blair Witch universe. It could have been its own thing for the first 2/3, and then just gotcha. Like last, I don't know.
Because I'm pretty sure that the implication is that the Blair Witch is an alien, and I think that's actually from like Blair Witch lore. That's not their creation. I listened to a podcast with Simon Barrett, the guy who wrote it. Co-wrote it. He co-wrote, I think, everything with Adam Wingard. I think he may even have worked on Godzilla vs. Kong.
Okay.
And he was talking about it. He was talking about, like we got every book, every like scrap of material. We got access to the old website. Like they went all in on it. And I don't know. It's just like, well, I guess Blair Witch is just kind of stupid when you have to explain it.
Yeah.
Just like so many things, right? Just like so much like suspenseful horror movies. Like as soon as you start making sequels and you have to like start explaining things and like broadening out the world, just most of them collapse under their own weight.
Yeah.
Like every franchise has tried to do this at some point, whether it's like Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street, even Friday the 13th. Like they come to a point that makes so many of them, they actually have to like go and try to create a lore and try to explain it.
Yeah.
And it's never satisfying. It's always kind of stupid. Some of them are smart enough to lean into how stupid they are, like Friday the 13th. But
they'll own up to it. Yeah, like with a franchise like that. But yeah, that's something that, again, it's like an artist's fear where, my recent short tape deck is already an expansion of an established short film from a couple years ago called I'll Call You Back. And I got to be very careful treading those waters of just, if I wanted to go feature length, like how big or how contained can you keep it without it feeling too much or too explosive or too, because I don't want to, I live in the very, I don't know. I like to keep things just very minimalistic as I can. So it's tough,
Well, it seems like you have a thing for like tone pieces.
Yeah,
I mean that's what it came off like to me. That's how it came off, like a tone piece, and I thought it was effective. I mean, because maybe you have a secret meaning, a secret intention there that I don't know, but you don't have to. Like we were talking about before, you don't have to. Like it doesn't. No. It's not necessary. But like I think I mean, like if you were to take something like Tape Deck and try to make it feature length, well, obviously you're gonna have to. Well, I mean, you could go the abstract route. You want to be like that David Lowery guy. You want to make like a ghost story.
Casey, I feel like I'm gonna call you up, man.
Yeah, yo,
do this again.
But you got to bring your own sheets. Yeah. I'm broke.
Yeah. Look, I got no money, man. You got.
Yeah. I got a basement. I got these tapes. I just like, I was listening to you, like your like Q&A stuff you were doing around it too. I thought it was cool that it's like you incorporated like your own life into it, like your own family tapes and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool. It did inform it while I was watching. Cause I watched it. I watched your stream basically. So I watched it twice with you talking about it, watching it, talking about it, and then watching it again. It was cool because the second time around, it just kind of, when you brought that up, that these are actually like things for my actual family and stuff. I thought it was, it just helped kind of add a layer of texture to it for me. The second time I watched it. But yeah, like I said, everybody, make sure you go and check it out. I'll put it in the description. You can see his audio commentary, basically. It kind of did like a little commentary, I suppose.
Q&A.
Q&A.
Yeah. With yours truly, StreamYard. It's a wonderful platform.
Hey, it works, it works. That's what I'll say.
And no, I'm not some weird creep who just like hangs out in his basement all day listening to tapes. That is just merely the context of the film.
No, he does. So, he definitely does.
Don't give him the insider info.
Yeah. He's like, that's actually my room. And you said that because you submitted it to film festivals and like Joe Bob actually saw it.
He saw it and gave me like a quick response. Didn't make the cut of his festival, but he watches everybody's stuff, so I gotta appreciate that.
And that's what's cool about Joe Bob, because he actually, even if it's just like a little note, a little bit of encouragement here or whatever, like that's very cool because he doesn't have to do that. He doesn't have to do that at all. He could just be like, no, you didn't get in.
He's one of these guys that will like tweet his fans like every 8 months. Like he'll just like send me Twitter messages like every like twice a year. Be like, well, shucks, Jeremy, where's the next venue in DC or whatever? I'm like, I don't know if COVID.
A mind like a steel trap.
Yeah.
Shudder is like both the best and worst thing that happened to him, because his writing got curb stomped because of being on Shudder, and that was always a shame to me, because he's like a libertarian type of guy.
Yeah.
And that did not jive well with the current horror blogger community.
I saw some of that. That was just...
You didn't see? They tried to cancel Joe Bob like a couple years ago. Because he told the director of The New Black Christmas, which we mentioned earlier, that she should let her movie speak for itself instead of going out and telling people what it is. Like what it's about. Because it's like, oh, she was out... that was how they were selling the movie. It's like, oh, it's about toxic masculinity and the patriarchy, and he's like, you could just let the movie say that. Like, why do you? If you have to say that to get people into the theater, it's probably not a very good movie.
No,
you got in a lot of trouble. Then people were like bringing up some of his more like edgy articles from the past and stuff. I was like, that sucks so much. Like, people just can't. What do you expect? Like, he's a fucking 60 some odd year old man. That's like a.
He's just trying to make sense of the world,
Well, make sense of the world, or just have a fucking opinion. Like, you're not allowed to touch, like, you're not allowed to talk about something. You're not allowed to have just a very basic opinion. Wasn't it like that's such a light criticism? And then they like had a meltdown about it for like 2 weeks.
Yeah. It's kind of been sad because this last season and maybe and a half or so, it's just like you can tell he's not at that prime when he first started. Once all that news kind of just leaked out, and I don't know.
Yeah, he doesn't have the edge.
Not anymore.
There used to be up until like I would say I agree with you. It was like a last year, like he's kind of dulled that edge a lot. Because he used to say very edgy shit. Because that was part of the character of Joe Bob Briggs. Like that's just it is partially a character. I think a lot of it is him, but it's also a character. And I guess the Shudder crowd just wasn't having it. I'll tell you what. If they get rid of The Last Ravenans, that'll be the end of me and Shudder. I own most of the other movies they have on there that I want to watch, and I'll
call it quits.
I basically just have a subscription to it just so Joe Bob can get a paycheck.
Yeah,
that's how I feel.
Yeah, any money I'm paying towards Shudder is not going towards the horror drag or whatever the
drag show, the drag horror show, or whatever foreign piece of shit that they slap Shudder original on and then throw up there. A lot of that it comes with the territory. A lot of bad horror movies out there. That's always been that way. That's never going to change. So if you're on a horror platform, there's going to be a lot of indie trash on there. I'm sure that's just the way it's going to be.
Would you consider Green Room a horror film? On those lines, at least.
Yes, it would be something I would consider a quote unquote secret horror movie, secretly a horror movie. I would say that, yeah, because I do think it really speaks to like a very visceral terror that people might feel, and I think it works on layers. I think even just like the whole idea of being it being like a neo-Nazis and stuff adds this other layer to it that kind of adds to your, like in a meta sense, adds to your understanding of why you should feel uncomfortable. Yeah. And I think it works. It works very well in that regard. So yeah, I would say it's horror adjacent at the very least.
Sure.
What would you say? Do you think it's a horror movie?
To some level, I think it's got that visceral tension to it that's much that's very akin to what you would get out of like a horror thriller. But at the same time, with that added layer of it being like, yeah, punk rockers and a neo-Nazi camp of people. What's so beautiful about that is that the scenario can still be frightening, even if it was completely different types of people. It could be jazz musicians and
yeah, I mean, like,
some militia.
Yeah, exactly. It could be like rappers.
Yeah,
that's another thing I thought. I was like, oh, there's a version of this movie that could take place in like L.A. or actually it could in Atlanta, Georgia. Actually, that's a good idea. I'm gonna rip that off. I'm gonna remake Green Room in Atlanta, Georgia, with rappers.
Yellow Room or something. It's really hot out.
Yeah, what could I call it? The Hot Box. There you go. There you go. I like it.
Yeah.
Put it into production next summer. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very solid genre movie. If my biggest criticism is that it's a little cold and it's a little distant, and that does make it hard to connect with the movie on any level other than the mechanical sense to it. I just really love the mechanics of the filmmaking and the way the story is constructed and the way that it reveals itself as it goes. That's more of what I get out of Green Room than something like Blue Ruin, which I actually did feel like emotional about.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it hits all the right notes. And if you haven't watched it or in a few years, or everything we've said about it sounded intriguing to you, definitely check it out. Obviously not for the faint of heart, not for Green Aunt Sally, but everybody else will get something out of it, I'm sure.
Unless you're trying to give her a heart attack, yeah.
Yeah. If you're
maybe your Green Aunt Sally really sucks, and you're just like, how can we, COVID didn't take her out. Green Room something. Green Room did it.
Don't look at me.
Me? We were just watching a movie. I don't know what you're talking about, Dad.
Yeah.
You know she has a weak heart. Well, hey, she said that's what I told you. She saw Patrick Stewart on the cover. She's like, oh, I like Patrick Stewart.
I love original Star Trek.
Yeah. Star Trek, The Next Generation. Oh, what a revelation. What a revelation. But yeah, do you have any other thoughts about the movie? Anything like that?
I guess by the end I was hard pressed to think of anything I disliked about it, but there's not really anything I could think of. I gave it 4.5 stars on Letterboxd.
Yeah, me too.
I would have given it 5 stars. But there weren't any black people in it, so no.
I know. Where were the black neo-Nazis?
They were sorely missing from the
what
cast.
The fuck, dude? I'm pretty sure I've have it on good authority from Call of Duty video games that that time period is multiracial, and black people can also be Nazis.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, in the spirit of equity, got to make it equitable, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Got to make it equitable. I hope that I'm saying tape deck. I'm just saying, buddy.
Yep.
You might want to recast yourself.
Yeah, today's climate really got to consider.
Don't go the Laurence Olivier route. Don't do Othello. Don't do that. No, don't do that. That would be bad.
Yeah. I have some connects. I know who I can call. So
yeah. Okay. There you go. Oh, are you? I have many blacks friending me. Oh no. I know some black.
No.
Oh, do you? Good for you. I have spoken to many a black gentleman in my day.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think it is a technical masterpiece. If not a little cold, it's a little cold. I would say that's probably a knock against it. The more I've thought about it, even just during this conversation, that is the one thing that I think maybe I would have liked to have known the characters a little bit better, but under the circumstances, not a lot of time to. And I think it really is more of almost like a tone piece than it is really like a character piece. Not very much of a character piece.
And if that's what you're into, you'll get a ton out of the tone.
Oh, for sure. Oh yeah, you will feel uncomfortable, and you may cringe a few times, in a good way.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Jeremy. I really appreciate it, my friend.
Yeah, this was fun. Thanks again for having me on. I always look forward to any future movie just convos.
Yeah, who doesn't like being on Zoobox, dude? We got 635 subscribers now, Jeremy.
That's good. That's really good.
We're big time, okay? I got friends paying for super chats to have minor internet celebrities say my name. You know, it's good stuff.
Let's see here. You got Jesse Lee Peterson backing you up now. You got hopefully Diane, the antinatalist.
I got Sydney Watson.
Watson
from You Are Here. She works for the Blaze. Doesn't they work for the Blaze?
Yeah.
It's a podcast, a fake edgy podcast, not like Zoobox content. Okay, you want real edgy content? You come to Zoobox.
There you go.
Don't believe Conservative Inc. No. We're you know, trust me, you know, once this channel blows up, Jeremy, that link to tape deck's gonna be in there. Oh, we'll all benefit. We'll all bask in the glory of Zoobox.
We'll all reap all those benefits.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love it.
Oh,
it's
yeah, for
it's
sure.
something to look, you know, if there's any 2022 resolutions to be had, it's like this will be the year to
This will be the year. Yeah, this will be the year. This will be the year, guys. Don't worry. I won't grind another 2 years for 400 more subs.
Yeah. I'd say that 5 years later, like this is for sure.
Yeah, this is the year, guys.
Yeah.
Did you see that Jesse Lee Peterson video? I mean, I know it was a while ago, but it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to know more about Zoobox and you'd like to know more about Jeremy, all of his particulars will be in the description, including, like I said, a link to his short film. And we'll talk to you next time. I don't know what we'll be talking about, but it will be something. I can guarantee you that.
We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, we'll talk about it later. All right, good night, everybody. Or good morning, good day, whatever it is for you. Adios.
Really have to stay away from that nigger dope.